This is the Sober Boozers Club podcast.
Welcome everybody to the Sober Boozers Club podcast. My name is Ben Gibbs. I'm an alcoholic and I've been sober since January 2022. In that time, I have been navigating the world of alcohol-free beers, sampling some of the best that the world has to offer. In this podcast, we're going to talk to people from within these circles and find out a little bit about their journey. So you sit back, relax, and enjoy. Today I'm talking to Krishan and Tim from one of my favourite establishments in the world. It's Stirchley Wines and Spirits right here in Birmingham. They are one of the best bottle shops in the country, and that's not just me being biased. They've been nominated for countless awards. We're going to get into that. We're going to discuss the story and the history of Stirchley Wines and Spirits, and shock horror, we're going to talk about beer. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking time out of your Sunday to join me. This is my first ever two-guest podcast, so that's exciting news.
We're glad to accommodate.
You've accommodated me in so many ways historically. Your establishment is, in my opinion, the finest bottle shop in the Midlands, if not the United Kingdom. I knew of Stirchley Wines and Spirits when I was a drinker of real boy booze, and I popped in if I was having like special guests around and I wanted to be like, look, I don't just drink cheap lager, I drink nice things as well. But we kind of became friends when I stopped drinking alcohol, because your range was the best alcohol-free range that I had ever seen in the wild. But the story of Stirchley Wines and Spirits is a long one. So I was wondering if you could go into that a little bit. How did this all start for you and for your family?
So we established the business in 1979. It was my father and I think my aunt at the time, or rather my aunt at the time. And my dad jumped in kind of very quickly and just went, I'll catch you. They already ran an off license over in Albury. And I think my dad just kind of went, I can do this as well. And kind of just worked there as a partner and then eventually bought out the place. And that was very quickly after it opened. So he'd been basically running it since 1979, ran 2 jobs right into the 80s. So he was working hard at what he did. Always meticulous about what he did. So it was always something that was always trying to be the best, not in terms of like we're better than everybody else, but just put all the effort in, keep the place clean, make it presentable. He always had a studious mind about that, trying to make sure that everything was exactly how it should be. That's always carried on. I joined probably in the late 80s, early 90s, probably when I turned 18. I'd been working there since I was 8. By the way. So since it opened, I'd been there just working, helping, stacking shelves. It was serving customers, booze and fags at 8, 9, 10. Because you could get away with that stuff back then.
Mm-hmm.
You could just do it. It'd be like, somebody came in on 20 Bensons. Yeah, no problems, we'll sort you out. So it was always there. Serve, we used to do, draft sherry, draft cider. And people come in with their bottles and they go, pint of the dry sherry, please, or the cream sherry. And I'd be like, right, I'm doing that. Right, at 10 years old, I'm pouring alcohol into containers, just going for it. So, I've been there a long time. So went off to college, did that thing. I'm not very good at concentrating. So I'm not very good at learning stuff. So I went to college, got very okay at that. And then when I left, I was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to get a proper job, or am I going to go and help in the family business? And I thought, this is the easiest route. It wasn't. And so I joined up at 18. One of the things we'd already been doing at that point was, we were a bit of everything, lots of booze, a little bit of grocery. And the first thing I did, it was only a tiny amount. It's like, washing up liquid and bog rolls and the odd box of cereal and a tin of beans, something like that. And first thing I did when I got in, I was like, all that's got to go. So I was like, right, I'll cut all that out, right? Let's be an off license if we're going to be an off license. At this point, we were still in our old shop. So where were we then? We're on the left-hand side of the business. It was the old Mark 1. And all we wanted to do is make sure that we had as much as we could get in there without making it look untidy. One of the things that happened very early on when I got in was I was introduced to international beer, and so was my father. And there was a guy that ran a warehouse in Birmingham who just dealt in international beer. It was only a small range, but it was Germanic, it was Belgianic, it was Czechoslovakian. Czechoslovakian was Budweiser, Budvar at that point. And he came in one day and he went, I've got this beer. You interested in taking it? It was Budweiser, Budvar. And we were like, yeah, it's different. We'll take that. And, for weeks, we got it in. And for weeks, we were just telling people about this new beer. We'll go, Budweiser, Budvar. It's like Budweiser, but not Budweiser. We explained the whole story about how the Americans had ripped off the Czechoslovakians and just taken this name and made it their thing. And the Czechoslovakians are fighting back. And this is the proper stuff. So this is kind of what we did. 2 weeks later, it comes back. How's it going? And we went, more. We want more of this. And he was like, yeah, welcome to my world. I'm going to give you more. And he just kept building little bits and pieces. He'd just bring in another Czechoslovakian. It was Bohemia Regent or something like that. And then he'd come in and he'd come back and he'll go, I've got some German beer. I've got some Belgian beer. And we were going, yeah, just keep bringing this stuff in. This is brilliant. This is different. This is all the nice things. People were noticing at this point, just going, oh, it's got something different. This is a point where also, when you went to the off-license, you only went to the off-license for booze. It was either you were a wine merchant or you were just selling a bit of everything and you did your little specialities. International beer at this point wasn't really a thing. You got the domestic grog. Occasionally you get things like Tuborg or something like that, and you'd get all excited about that, but that was it. So we, from about 89 into the 90s, we were just bringing in beer. By the time we got to maybe the first half of the 90s, I think we maybe had a complement of maybe 200-300 beers going into that time, mainly Belgian, a little bit of German, a lot of international stuff, things that were all sexy and exciting, things like Corona and Sol and Singer beer. We were getting those things in when they weren't doing the rounds. That's where we start. Keep doing that. Fast forward into the 2000s, we refit the store. We've bought the shop next door. We basically burst through the wall, refitted in 2000, and that's kind of what you see now since 2000. So about 25 years, we have made the shop just look like the way it is and just kept it that way and just gone, right, nice and tidy, keep it going. That gave us the opportunity to just expand. More wine at that point, more space just to do things. The beer space kind of filled itself up, but we weren't going crazy. It was a lot more international then. At about 2000, it wasn't really until about 2010 the British scene starts to kicks in. So we start playing in that space. We're bringing things like, you call it BrewDog.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we had a very good chat about
9.
BrewDog not too long ago.
Yeah, 2009. I think I had Punk IPA on my shelf in 2009. BrewDog had only been going a year at that point. I think we were the first people in Birmingham to bring BrewDog in. Weirdly, things that we brought to Birmingham first, Desperados.
What?
We had to get that. We had to get that on import from a company in Leeds. What? They were the official importers, and we were like going, right, send us Desperados. We were getting this stuff and it was going nuts. This was before it became a UK thing and became the ubiquitous crap it is now. But it was exciting then. And it was also French. Most people think it's Mexican. It's weird. Things like that. And we were getting, a Sapporo in when it was properly Japanese. We were getting those kind of really weird tidbits of things. It's going, wow, this is really different. And now these are ubiquitous to the point where they're actually not even brewed in the countries they're supposed to be in. Sol, no longer brewed in Mexico. It's now a UK beer. Sapporo, weirdly, brewed in Ireland by Guinness. And there's so much of that. Singer's brewed in this country now. Weirdly, the one that's really kicked me now is a Brooklyn Lager. That's brewed in Europe, which really, I'm a proper fanboy, and I am so upset by that. And it's a shame. Anyway, that's me. So, things like BrewDog, things like Thornbridge, things like Beavertown. I think we were the first people in Birmingham to grab Beavertown, because I went to the brewery to go and buy that stuff when it was still in the Duke and Q. Logan Plant took me on a tour. It was me and Lee from Favourite Beers in Cheltenham.
Yes.
We went down there, and he said, come and have a look at our brewery. It was in the basement. It was like the size of a small locker room. It was like, here it is, and and he talked us through what he was doing at the time, and it was just insane, and look at where they are now.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think we were quite fortunate at that point where we were not in the right place at the right time, because we were really well positioned to just go, this is exactly the kind of thing we want to play with. And, so in that early sort of 2010s, 11s, 12s, we were in our element, just finding all these new great breweries and then bringing those to people. So, we've done it. We've been there. In terms of alcohol-free, that's just been a slow evolution over that time. Once upon a time, there was none. There was no alcohol-free. It was Kaliber, and that was it. And Kaliber, if you've ever tried it, is the worst thing ever.
I've never had I'm going to say the pleasure, because I feel like as a part of just the lore of alcohol-free beer, it's a drink that should be drunk. Like I've tried to find it online, and you just can't get it.
No, I don't think
brewed by
it's not made
Guinness,
anymore.
wasn't it? I'm sure it was brewed by Guinness.
I think so. I'm not sure. I can't remember now.
But yeah, I know
It was always seen as the thing you had because you had no option. And that was always the thing. And there's everything before Kaliber, and there really wasn't anything about that I remember where anybody went, oh, we're doing an alcohol-free beer, because nobody saw that. If you wanted an alcohol-free beer, you were crazy. And, that's what Coke was for.
Yeah, and orange juice, of course.
And orange juice, and it always annoyed me because, when I was in my late teens and early 20s, right up to my early 30s, I didn't drink. And so when I went out, I was always the designated driver because I was the guy that never drunk anything. And people, so I'd go to the pub and I'd go, what am I going to drink? Because this is either Coke or orange juice or water. And I really didn't like it. So I just kind of stayed out of the space. I wasn't what they call going out socially. I didn't go to the pub because there's no need for me to go to the pub. Other than company, you just go, I just can't be asked to do that because I don't really want to drink anything. And I'm not really in that space. So I'm going to leave it out. So for me, it was something that was very frustrating. So I was always on the lookout for something interesting. It didn't really happen. There wasn't those real options, even from the German market. We'd see the odd thing, but it wasn't really until the mid sort of 2015s, somewhere around about there, where we started seeing little bits and pieces. It wasn't the UK breweries, but then occasionally you'd get a UK brewery coming in and just going, yeah, I can do that. We'll put something out. Although I'm not really sure what we were first bringing in or what we were noticing. What I do remember
that was my question.
people,
do you remember the first one that you kind of looked at for? Oh, people are buying this. Actually,
I think it might have been slightly more domestic-y stuff. So things like, possibly something like, I think it might have been stuff like the Freedom and stuff like that. But there would have been other things. I remember used to be able to, people would come in and go, have you got anything alcohol-free? And I'd go, here's some over here. And here's some over here, and I'd point around the shop. There'd like be 6 different things or 5 different things, and it would be always like around the shop. It wouldn't be all in one place because there wasn't any point. But what we were finding was, as time went on, we'd find more things, and we'd keep bringing them in, and they were still scattered around. And suddenly, I was like, "Do you know what? We could put all this on one shelf, we could stick it all together, and suddenly we got a range." I don't really know what the first thing was. I can't think. I've got a picture. I've got a picture of our current lineup on the screen. I'm staring at it at the moment. I'm going
on it being possibly bet because they were one of the early adopters of low alcohol process.
Possibly,
stick out in my mind. Other than Kaliber, obviously, they're the ones that stick out in my mind.
Yeah, but we didn't really ever stock Beck's Blue. I was never really a fan, but it may have been something like Beck's Blue very early on because it was there. It wasn't there for long because I think we just went, oh, we can find other things because there was always other things. But I'm not really sure what would have been the early adopters. It would have been more domestic-y stuff, so it would be Becks. It would be certain types of German alcohol-free. I think Veltins might have been in there very early on.
I mean, this sums up, if anything, the life of a non-drinker in the early 2010s up until the last 5 years. Finding options has been nigh on impossible until this kind of boom that we've had recently, where there seem to be so many options now and so many people releasing really good quality things. I mean, you say you've got a picture of your shelf. Your shelf alone is vast now.
The current range is sitting at about 45, nearly 50 lines, which is, I mean, we could still keep going. The problem with having too much is it's too much. I would rather have a smaller range, but be able to swap it out more often. Although, I think at this point, it just feels right to do it. The opportunities have never been so vast. This is like going back to 2014, suddenly looking at craft beer and going, oh, wow, there is that much stuff. And the thing is, it's not then at that point going, it's a case of trying to get everything. It's about having a good measure of it, which is kind of what we try and carry out through all the stuff we do. Is you can't have everything, therefore let's pick the things that we want. That's the philosophy we run with the kind of things we do. You know, they're the brands we want to support. They're the beers we want to see. These are the things we want to present to our customers. So when we're looking at putting a range together, that's what we're effectively doing. We're going, okay, how many different types of products can we put in? How much variety of style can we put in? So that at least there's something for everybody. It is insane at the moment, but I remember when it suddenly became a bit more of a thing with breweries. You know, there'd be the occasional brew. You know, some brewery would knock something out, you know, to be Wiper and True or something like that, or I'm not sure. Again, possibly things like I really don't know who was out there just doing things. It was when you got your alcohol-free breweries going, and they were like, we're just a brewery, and we're just going to do alcohol-free beer. So people like Nirvana, and it would have been, is it Big Drop?
Yeah, Big Drop.
Big Drop. Weirdly, small beer. Small beer with the big prices.
Yeah.
And, you know, you saw people like that coming along and going, we can just output everything to be alcohol-free. And that's where we suddenly gone, okay, this is a little bit more serious. We would take those brands on because we're like, we want that because it's filling up that space a little bit more. And there's a bit of variety in there. And I don't really know when it suddenly became trendy. I think it was during lockdown where breweries were suddenly going, we must have one. I think people were spending all day at home. They didn't want to all get smashed.
Well, speak for yourself.
Yeah, indeed.
Stay at home and just vegetate in alcohol. I think people did want to drink, but they didn't always want to drink, but they wanted something else.
Yes.
That was always the thing. We've talked about this every time you come in. It's very much about having an alternative. You know, you want to drink, but you don't want to drink. You want to have something else. When you go to the pub, when you go to the restaurant, when you're sitting on the settee.
I think a lot of this revolution was actually driven by the shift in focus by the younger generation. Those people that would normally have moved up into alcohol-heavy beers or heavy drinks, they're no longer focusing on that. That's not their main focus, you know. So obviously the industry adapted around that. You saw your early adopters, your Nirvanas in 2015, 2016. Your drop beers, Big Drop. Sorry, not drop beers, Drop Bear as well.
Yeah,
Drop Bear. Yes.
So that led to alcohol-free focused breweries sort of leading that charge. Then you saw some of the more traditional, smaller artisan breweries go, well, you know, we can have a bit of that as well. So they started to invest a little bit in equipment and process to to sort of go down that process. I mean, one of the most surprising things is the sort of the mid-sized breweries that, you know, the sort of the stalwarts of the brewing scene, people like Thornbridge. They hadn't really sort of even broached that until well after lockdown. You know, we certainly didn't see anything from them until they were very and to their credit, that's because they are a very process-focused brewery. They didn't do it until they were sure they could do it.
Yeah, I think when you talk lockdown as well, you'd be amiss to not mention Mash Gang, because of course Mash Gang born during lockdown and kind of really started to make their move when the world started opening up. I know for me, that's when I had to start drinking alcohol-free drinks, because my relationship with alcohol during COVID had gotten so bad that it became like dangerous. And I think that there's been a shift in attitude since lockdown towards drinking. Like, a lot of people that did become home drinkers during lockdown then had to address their drinking and go, I can't drink like this every day. But I've really got a taste for a beer now at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I wonder if there's anything out there that I could get that kind of scratches that itch. And you try a Heineken or a Beck's Blue or whatever was in the supermarket at the time just post-COVID, and it just doesn't cut it. So then you have Mash Gang emerging from lockdown, and all of a sudden it seems like the game just seemed to change. And I don't know if that's a very one-sided view, because that's when I got into alcohol-free beer. But from
It's the
a little
BrewDog
bit of
effect.
research, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They come along, they've turned up, they're big, loud, and they're kicking over the tables, and they go, hey, we're here now, and we're going to bring you choice.
Well, I'm going to make a confession here, because up until about a week and a half ago, I hadn't drunk a Mash Gang beer.
And what one did you drink?
Oh, that
Which one was it, Krishan?
Lesser
Because
Evil.
they sent
It
us
was
a
the care package.
So we
got
talked
4
about this, didn't we? Yeah,
we got the care. Yes. I read up on this afterwards when we talked about it, and we talked about the little bit of bitterness that was a little bit odd on that one. And I was reading up reviews on it, and everybody else seemed to like it really, really a lot. We didn't dislike it. I think we just thought there was a bit of that odd taste that came off the back of it.
That kind of leans into me more than you, Krishan, because I'm a fairly analytical person when it comes to beer, and always have been, right the way back from, you know, my early days as a drinker back in the 90s. Probably one of the very early adopters. You know, me sat at 11 o'clock at night, early 90s, waiting for Michael Jackson's Beer Hunter to come on Channel 4, and it was never consistent. So, you know, that was prior
Not
to me
that
being...
Michael Jackson.
No, not that Michael Jackson. The beer writer Michael Jackson.
Yeah, that Michael Jackson's Beer Hunters would probably be a very different story, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Saying that,
yeah.
my guide at that time were people like Michael Jackson. I've shown you the books, haven't I, Tim? You know, I'd have the pocket guide. That was my reference. Pocket guide, Michael Jackson's Guide to Beer. It was a little pocket edition of all like write-ups and reviews of all the different beers he'd drunk. And we were like, hey, we need all these things in our catalogue.
To my mind, one of the most important people in sort of modern beer writing, because he changed the language. Him and Roger Protz, they changed the focus of how we describe beer. You know, I think ultimately they shaped the direction of beer coming out of the 70s and the Big Six into the 80s and then into the 90s, and the eventual sort of development of more recipe-focused beer, which would eventually then lead on into process-focused and looking at, you know, not just process-focused, but also geographical process, geographical location. So, yeah, I would very much go down the route of saying both of those people are very, very important people in the development of modern beer. There were obviously other people around the world, but from a UK-centric point of view, those two people.
The Mash Gang and Lesser Evil.
Yes.
I think that was one we tried recently. It was good. I think we enjoyed it. I think it was just if you were presented that as a non-alcoholic option, as it would be, you'd be going, actually, that is, that's pretty decent. That's pretty good.
It does what it says it's going to do, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think it does what it says it's going to do very well. I think if you'd have given me that 3 years ago and said, this is an alcohol-free stout, I'd have gone, no, I don't believe you. This can't be.
Yeah.
Or imagine it 10 years ago. Like, my God.
I think 10 years ago, even broaching the idea of an alcohol-free stout would have been a concept beyond most brewers. They would have just gone, no. That don't understand
10
how
years ago, there were definitely things. I mean, Germany, definitely,
but nothing specifically stout-like. Stout has always been an outlier in that sort of sphere. It's only really in the last 4 or 5 years that we've seen brewers actually approach something other than a pale ale or a lager.
I mean,
because it's easier to do that.
Things like Nirvana Stout, the Nirvana Stout, were definitely around probably 2016-ish.
Okay, so 10 years, yeah.
Possibly. So they have been around. I think it's that long ago. Maybe I'm wrong.
I know the Big Drop launched in 2016 because I had to read up on that recently. So Big Drop did form in 2016. I don't know when they actually were 2015.
I think Nirvana might have been round about that time as well. But, I think we're in a good space. We know we're in a good space when the big breweries suddenly are panicking, or they're all bringing something out. Heineken bring one out, Corona bring one out, Peroni bring one out, Guinness bring one out. And you're going, that's because the independent space went, hey, we can offer this. And big breweries don't want to be left out. They want to dominate. They want to be in the market. They want to be front and center, which is a good thing as well. Don't get me wrong, if it puts more people's eyes on that type of product, then that's a good thing. But that's purely from territorial need from those guys. Now, there is going to be a point where they just suddenly go, we don't want to play anymore. And they're going to sully the waters on the way out of the door. That's always the fear that that's what they'll end up doing. They'll just go, you need to be drinking again. Nobody's drinking alcohol-free beer. And again, we've talked about this previously, Ben. I think people have always wanted it, a choice. And it'll always keep going back to this thing. It's that having that choice, that other thing, and that's where this comes from. The thing is, it's like anything. As long as there's a demand for it, there'll always be a supply of it. There are plenty of breweries now who are going, well, we can put this into our range, or we're going to produce this type of product all the time as a focus of our business. As long as they have support and as long as there is an acceptability for this, then there's always going to be a market for it. There's always going to be output. I think the real change is going to be when you start to see it offered as standard in a pub, in a bar, or there's always going to be maybe 2 or 3 choices a restaurant. You see that in the food side. They'll go, oh, well, we have vegetarian options, we have vegan options, we have dietary options. We will flex for you. But why not put that into the beer space? Because it's not going to be something that's going to be offered so much in the wine space. But nice to have the options. But
yeah, I feel like that has to be.
It's changing, and it's a good thing.
Yes, I have noticed the change just in the past 12 months. The amount of, I don't have to do research before going out with friends anymore. I'm much more happy to just go somewhere and wait and see what they have, because 9 times out of 10, it's going to be something like a Wiper and True. It's not going to be just we've got Beck's Blue or we've got Heineken. That's not really an issue anymore. And I mean, worst case scenario, everywhere's got Guinness at the moment. And I think, again, Guinness are a brand that we talked about in detail not too long ago as well, about that Guinness seemed to have made it acceptable for everybody to have an alcohol-free drink just by saying, this is a Guinness 0%. We've made it, so it's fine now. Alcohol-free beer is fine now, right? Because we've made a Guinness 0%. And it's for one beer that everybody, when I get into the conversation about alcohol-free beer, everybody always starts with, have you tried Guinness Zero? And that's always the conversation. And it's like, yeah, it's fine. But it's weird that it's got such a reputation.
I mean, from my point of view, from when I'm serving people, it was a slow burn, because I remember when Guinness Zero first appeared, and the first time we got it in, it took forever to sell. We were like going, this stuff isn't selling. Nobody wants it. It was like people would ask for it before I had it, and they would go, have you got it? Have you got it? Have you got it? And I'd go, okay, I better get it. Got it. And then people just went, nobody mentioned it. Nobody was like going, have you got it? And it'd just take forever to sell. And then we were like, okay, we'll give it a pause. We'll bring it back another time. And then the moment it ran out, people were just coming in and going, have you got it? Have you got it? Have you got it? And I'm going, okay, we'll have another go. Got it in. And then, boom, people coming in, they're going, it's like, 2 or 3 times a week, somebody will come in and go, Guinness Zero. Yeah, no problems. Obviously, when we didn't have it, we'd go, here's all our other beer. This week, I had somebody come in. It was an old guy. Came in, old guy, I say, he was in his 65, 70s, something like that. Came in, said, Guinness Zero, please. And I was like, going, yeah, no problems. It took 4 cans. And he says, yeah, I really like this. It's like, tastes like proper Guinness. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is cool. He says, yeah, what I want to do is line 2 of them up. One real, one proper, and just taste them together, just see where we are. And I was like, well, there is a need for it, because you've got this thing where you've got the biggest mechanism in the world, and arguably Guinness is probably one of the largest brands, singular brands in the world, which is why it's worth £10 billion. And they're going, we're gonna sink our hard-earned into this, and we're gonna make it work. Obviously, they can do that. We also talked about this in terms of why Guinness works. Alcohol in Guinness is probably the least noticeable part of a Guinness. It's hidden behind everything else. It's not very highly hopped. What it is very malty. And I think,
the same can be said of all stouts, though, Krishan, to be honest.
Yes.
Stouts are not designed to be particularly highly hopped.
No. I agree. The thing is, Guinness are they are stout in most people's eyes. If you're talking about, do you want a Guinness, or do you want a stout? What you're probably saying is, do you want a Guinness? Do you want a Guinness? You're probably saying, do you want a stout? Yeah. Other stouts are available.
That goes back to the sort of the language and the disabusement of language around certain products. Because throughout the 80s, nobody referred to lager as lager; it was word carling. Right. It's very, very clever marketing in that respect, because it put it in front of everybody's face, and then it became synonymous. Carling was lager. Guinness is now synonymous with stout. Back from my time working in pubs, people would come in and ask for Guinness, and I go, well, we've got a stout. So it's the adoption of certain terms to mean certain other things.
But Guinness has certainly legitimised alcohol-free drinking. I think it's definitely a good thing. It allows people to have options, as we've said before, some people just don't want to drink. Some people can't drink, they're like, well, I'm on meds, I need to be drinking something, but I want to drink. It has to taste like a drink, but it doesn't have to have any alcohol in it. Pregnancy, health issues, or weirdly, I just don't drink. Yeah. Nice to have the option. Nice to have the choice. Nice to be able to say,
and to have that stamped by Guinness to say, it's okay, we approve of this, you're fine. Because it's such a massive thing to have the acceptance from the industry, really. But acceptance from the industry equals acceptance from hospitality equals acceptance from peers, is my kind of take on it. So to be able to drink that, there is something nice about having a Guinness in a Guinness glass and being in the pub. Because you go, yeah, this is just normal. This is just normal drinking.
This is okay. Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think you've got this space that, as I said, as long as people want it, and I think they do, I think it's much more of a, you can have a non-alcoholic drink because you're driving, or because you're on something else, or you can't drink, or all those reasons, and say, I can be part of that conversation now. I can be part of that group now. And I'm not, and it's more of a case of I'm not being seen as the guy who's not drinking.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing, isn't it? It's the importance of not being the odd one out in the group, and
Yeah, massively.
And being made to feel guilty about it.
Yeah, or to feel like you're being looked at. I've said so many times, if you give me a Coca-Cola, it's like you may as well shine a spotlight on me in a pub.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. I'm very open about my alcoholism and why I don't drink alcohol, but that doesn't mean that I just want to go into a room with a placard and tell people. I want to go into a room and have a beer. And if people want to talk to me about alcohol-free beer, I'll gladly invite them on a podcast and talk about it for an hour. But, before, if they
You've
don't...
won an award for that, don't you know?
Well, silver award winning, not quite gold, but...
Do you know what?
That's
Acknowledgement is acknowledgement.
Yeah, it was mad.
It's the whole point is, you are sitting in a room with peers that are well respected, and that's worth its weight. That's worth its weight. When you're sitting with those people and they're going, "You're one of us." It's not a bad
for
thing.
me, the biggest anxiety I had going into that, like going to the dinner, was because I didn't see myself as a part of this world. I very much saw myself as a person on the outside that was fascinated by it. And, as someone that only talks about non-alc, the British Guild of Beer Writers, you think, okay, these guys are, this is the real thing. These guys are into the real thing. And I was curious as to what they'd think of alcohol-free beer. Obviously, I know that a lot of these people have done articles on the subject and have discussed the subject, but there's always that thing in the back of your brain that says, do these people just care about it because they have to, because it exists? But some of the conversations with people in that room, the things that they were saying to me about this kind of sphere of alcohol-free beer, it has made me love the beer industry even more, because it's like these people they just get it. And they're saying, like, the evolution of this and the growth of this is only a good thing for beer. And that was
absolutely.
Like, above everything else, that was my favourite thing from that evening, was leaving feeling like I had a place in the world of beer. And the fact that I don't drink alcohol or can't drink alcohol doesn't impact that. That was the biggest takeaway for me, because, nothing beats that.
I think the interesting thing in your future is when you're suddenly the guest, the random talking head, on some chat show or daytime TV program where you're the guy that's talking about the alcohol-free thing. Then that might be an interesting space for you. I think that's going to happen.
I'd love that to happen. That would be.
I think it will. I think, you're perfectly in the right space for that. It's only just got to happen once, and there you go. There's that other thing that happens. I think the other one where I think, if you've made it, you've written an article for camera, or B, the better one, writing an article for drinks retailing. Then you've made it. Then you're published.
That
I
would
think
be
if drinks
wild.
retailing come to you and turn around and go, well, we want you to write an article on alcohol-free beer and things like that. That would be an interesting thing, because they're the voice of especially on the off-trade side, where people will read those articles and make decisions, and that's not just from, like, let's say, the small guy like me. That's all the way to the top. People like, head of Marks and Spencer's or whatever, the big supermarkets and stuff like that. People are making real decisions and going, well, I'm going to read this article written by Ben. That also would be an insane thing. Who knows,
Yeah, well, that's it. In the last 3 years, enough has happened for me to go, okay, this is, I decided to stop drinking at a very good time. Because imagine if I'd have been trying to do this,
now
5-6 years. Well, I mean, you've got now when it's already so established, but also when you just had Nirvana, big drop there, and Heineken. there wouldn't be much content really, would there? And today we're going to talk about Heineken again. Like, whereas now it's like, if I wanted to put a new beer out every day, which I mostly do, to be honest, but I could probably do 2 beers a day and probably keep that going for a year, I think, and still do a new beer twice a day.
Yeah.
Which is just...
There must be so many companies just sending you stuff now and going, have a look at our beer. There must be.
There were, and I'm not going to say that I'm not appreciative, but I think a lot of breweries have collared onto the fact that I'm going to have to buy it anyway, because it's what I do. So when I started, I got far more sent to me than I do now. Like, I'll still, don't get me wrong, like I still get looked after, which is lovely. Like Barsham Brewery sent me every now and again when Alex is feeling kind. But like, so Barsham Brewery recently released an alcohol-free beer, and they sent me like a pallet of it, and I was like, geez, I'm never going to get through it. It was gone in 2 days. But now I think when breweries release a beer, it's like, oh, be good to see what Ben thinks of this. And they know I'm going to buy it because I've got to buy it because it's what I do. But you know what? I don't mind buying the stuff. Like, because I'd be doing it anyway. It's lovely to get sent stuff, but also there is, I mean, the other day when I popped in to see you, because you had my lovely collab beer in the shop.
Yes, I was about to mention that.
It was just so lovely to be there and to look at all these beers. And, you know, I left with beers that I didn't need to film, but I wanted them because we were talking about beer, and I thought, I really want a German Helles now because I'm just looking at it. So I left with them. And I love that. I love going and buying beer from bottle shops primarily. There's just such a joy in that. And I think it's because it's something that I used to enjoy doing. Like when I was a drinker and we'd come to Stirchley Wines and Spirits and we'd go, oh, I'm going to get a big sharing bottle because it feels lovely. I still get that now when I go and look at your range. It's just great. There's no better feeling.
That's appreciated. I appreciate that, because at the end of the day, that's really, you know, other than our objective is to sell beer or sell alcoholic products and non-alcoholic products. You know, it's nice when people come in and go, I like what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing, you know, because for me, it's, you know, if it was that easy, everybody would do it. And I know not everybody can do it. And I know it's not that easy because it takes work, it takes effort. There's a lot of, well, I say planning. It's not planning, but there's a lot of thought goes into what we end up doing. And, you know, I take my hat off to any business that turns around and goes, I want to be that good that other businesses, you know, are going to look at me and go, you know, you're doing it right. I think there are quite a few of us, but, you know, we're a rare breed now because it's harder to do what we do. You know, it's that idea of use it or lose it. It's never been so true, even for a business like us. We've been here 45 years, and it still feels like, you know, if people don't come in, don't kind of use the facilities we have, you know, we won't be here. It's simple. It's, you know, more so. Once upon a time, I would turn around every day of the week. I can open my doors and I'll be okay. It doesn't feel like that anymore. The world has changed.
The advent of subscription services and direct sales to customers from breweries is very much affecting certainly our footfall and indeed the entire retail space as it sort of expands outside of the world of beer. So to that end, obviously, we're now looking at where we go from here, and we have been over the last couple of years, Krishan, retooling, re-wallpapering, repurposing the online store that we've had for many years. It was in the background, didn't function brilliantly, but served a purpose to a certain extent. So the idea is,
especially during
lockdown, yes, yeah. So the idea is with the website as it's being developed is that it will not 100% mirror the in-store experience, but it will certainly give people a flavour of what we offer in store. So initially, click and collect. I'm not revealing anything sort of secretive era, or top secret era, so initially
that's available now,
which is available now, with a view, once the inventory is a little bit fuller, to what we call final mile, which would service Birmingham and the very sort of local areas, and then eventually something approaching something like a national delivery service.
It is interesting. It's I mean, times do change, don't they? And people do need to change with these times. But I think that there's certain things that need to be long-term fixtures in communities, and bottle shops are definitely one of those things. Like, it's so important to support bottle shops. Like,
oh yeah,
for me, there's 4 people, right, that made me feel like I could do this. And I'm not just talking like do the page and the podcast. I'm talking could do sobriety. It's Martin Dixon, who is another alcohol-free beer commentator. It's Mash Gang, I suppose, the whole of Mash Gang. Mark Dredge, because he took alcohol-free beer to television and made it like, we're going to talk about this. And it's yourselves, because it was, I could go to my bottle shop and have a chat for an hour about these beers and not feel like I was stupid for asking about them, you know.
Oh God, no.
I think
God,
they're really important spaces.
I will take my time when I have it, and I will talk about whatever it is that somebody is interested in. I think it's all important. So, you know, I don't look at people who drink alcohol-free stuff, alcohol-free beers, wines, spirits, cider, as, you know, weirdos. They're not. Being from that side of the fence, I kind of get it. And the reason I do drink now is it was more of a necessity to further understand what I was, for a long time, just talking about. On the other hand of that, even now, you know, weirdly, I probably don't nearly as much as I possibly could. Tim will be testament to that. He's like, have you drunk that beer yet? No, I haven't. 6 months later, I'm still not drunk it. So I will take it and leave it, always have. I'm now in that space where I just go, well, if I want to drink, I'll have a drink. If I'm out and I'm in the right situation, yeah, I'll have a drink. But even then, I will just go, right, done, stopped. Sometimes, occasionally, don't stop. But, you know, somebody will slap me in the face at some point. Go.
Somebody will throw you out of their hotel room. Yes.
Yeah, there is that. Yes, there is that. But mate, we're at the Dorchester, so, you know, I'm taking the alcohol. I'm drinking it. No.
Was that one of the awards evenings?
That was Drinks Retailing Awards last year.
Tell me a bit about that. How did that feel?
Oh, that's insane. Drinks Retailing Awards. Okay, so for people who don't know what it is the off-trade awards ceremony run by Drinks Retailing News. This is the off-trade side awards given out to the retail side of alcohol sales. Right from small store right up to the big supermarkets, everybody's invited to play along, and it's seen as effectively the Oscars of that space. You know, it's the big award, because there isn't really something that's set up that encompasses retail in that space as a category. Anyway, it's made up of lots of different categories: beer and cider, wine, spirits, champagne, luxury, drinks retailer, multiple retailer, etc., etc. Small and big. So that's small categories as in independent categories and national categories. We've been lucky enough to have been nominated 3 times with 4 awards. So 4 times, 3 years. So so best independent beer retailer twice, 3 times, sorry. And then once as best drinks retailer, independent drinks retailer. That covers everything. Yeah. And that's insane. So first time it was in 2014. That was beer retailer. 2019, beer retailer. Beer and cider retailer, and drinks retailer. That is in its own right crazy. We've never won though. We've got close. We got close, and in terms of we got to the finals, and that was it. But do you know what? That's good enough for me. It's it's insane that we even live in that space because, all we do is we're just shopkeepers, that happen to do something that's a little bit interesting. But obviously, when you get nominated for these things, you go, well, we must be doing something right and we must be pretty good at what we do. I'm not going to say that, but that's for everybody else to say. And these things kind of just go, you know what? We're saying it. You're pretty good at what you do. So every year, February, they have these awards. They're at the Dorchester Black Tie event, and it is insanely exciting. I think, just to be in the room on the day and be in that space is just crazy. Winning or not, it doesn't matter at that point. Winning's the bonus, I've always said. 2025 has just gone through. Another business within Birmingham that always gets nominated is Stirchley Wines.
Okay.
So I think pretty much every year there's something they're nominated for. This year, I think they won an award. I'm not sure which category, but I think
Stirchley Wines have won
they've won
more than
so many of them over the years. Best wine retailer, best hybrid retailer. I think they've done best chain. And I think they've won it so many times. It's insane. I think this year they got 3 nominations. Wow. Which is crazy. They definitely do something right. But they got 3 nominations this year. I don't know of any other business that's ever got 3 nominations all in one year for that particular event. So that's crazy. But they've been on Decanter's list. They've been on Harper's Best 100 list. I think they were number 1 last year. I think it was Harper's list of not retailers. It might have been retailers, but that's all in like the wine space. They've won Decanter's Best Wine and stuff like that. Anyway, they're very good. So yeah, big shout out to Phil and his team. So yeah, Drinks Retailing Awards, crazy. That's always one that is always a surprise when it happens. The other one, obviously, last year was SIBA Business Awards, which we won the category of Best Independent Craft Beer Retailer. Wow. Which is also like crazy because if anybody knows who SIBA are, and hopefully everybody does, the Society of Independent Brewers and Associates, I think. And they are the representative body of the brewing industry.
So for many years, they've been focused solely on breweries, but they have now widened their remit to look at the adjacent parts to the brewing industry. So retail is one of their most recent focuses, which hence why we've got that. But that was genuinely a surprise, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I threw my hat into the ring, put my little application in, and then I think within a week the deadline. I think I put it in on deadline day. And a week later or something like that, they were like, oh, you've been nominated. I'm like going, bloody hell, I've only just put the bloody nomination in. So that was an absolute surprise. And they were like 2 weeks later, we're on a train to Liverpool. Or 3 weeks later. And obviously they hold their awards at Beer X. It's the furthest thing away from Dorchester. It's literally a conference hall type thing. Lots of exhibitors trying to do their thing with the brewing scene. So I'm there going, oh, there's nothing here for me except for the fact that I know a whole bunch of these people, which was the only reason I didn't get bored. Because I was like, well, this is a brewing exhibition and not a retail exhibition. So, there's hardly anything for me, but it's still very, very cool to go and visit because there were lots of people there that were within the beer industry that we admire and we. Hopefully we support by stocking their products as well. So that was just a really crazy thing just to be there as a retailer. It's like, bringing a knife to a gunfight. And, we got to the end of the evening, they're doing the awards and, suddenly they're on our category, other retailers there as well. And suddenly they call our name and I'm like, going, bloody hell. I wasn't expecting this because normally I don't win anything ever. So
Gareth Southgate of the bottle shop.
That's it. And I'm like, well, you know what? We'll take this. So I'm absolutely proud of this one because at the end of the day, I mean, this is like you're being awarded something by people who support the industry that you support. And you're going, well, when you're talking about the best in the room. You're talking about the best in the room, according to those people that say they are the best in the room, which sometimes you go, oh, well, it's just whatever that is. SIBA, I think, have, absolute legitimacy in this case. They are the people that, do know what they're talking about. They are the people who do support and absolutely support an industry. So if they're going to call my name out, or our name out, then bloody fantastic. So, we're legitimately, award-winning. And a good award winning for me. So, that's good as well. Only had a pint then that day. I was like, can't drink too much.
Amusingly, so I was actually sat here when the news came through, because I got my son, so I couldn't justify going to Liverpool. But I just received a picture of a very shell shocked looking Krishan.
Oh yeah, there wasn't a good picture that day of me. I think I was just like a rabbit in headlights. It was a shock, but it was also just like I just had the dirtiest grin the whole evening after I got this announcement. So every time somebody took a picture, I just like the most terrible photo of me. I'm not very photogenic generally, but I was like. It's like that the whole time, just me.
It's like going... me at the Guild Awards. I look back at pictures and it's like I just look like a schoolboy that's been taken on a school trip somewhere. Just me with like holding my silly little silver placard, going. Oh,
that's not silly. It's not silly.
Well, it's not silly, but it's silly that it happened.
Yeah.
Which is fine, isn't it?
It puts you in interesting places. It ends up putting you in interesting places. And that's the crazy thing about what you end up doing. You're going, well, what? All I'm doing is this thing, and
how
now
did beer
suddenly,
get me here?
Yeah, how did my efforts of doing what I do, like everybody else, get me where I am? Or where in these really weird spaces? In a million years, I'd never think I'd be at something like the Dorchester. In a million years, I wouldn't have thought, I'd end up being, at somewhere like the House of Commons, and you've done the same thing. You're going, because of what I do, there you are, and you're walking through the Great Hall at the Palace of Westminster, and you go, oh, this is something this is something that I would never imagine would happen, or probably imagine ever happening again. Although
I had such a moment walking through Westminster. Where I've said to you previously, I was walking through Westminster and just looking up at the ceiling and thinking, this is where the Queen was and where Philip and Holly skipped the queue and all of that business. And I was just like, if I wasn't an alcoholic and I hadn't done everything that I've done, and then if I hadn't have cracked that first can of Low Life or whatever it was, it wouldn't have been Low Life because that was very recent, but that first can of alcohol-free beer, I would not be where I was. I'm seeing the photo. Yeah, that is literally the face of someone that says, how has this happened?
Yeah. Like, what? Anyway, yeah, so, yeah, it is insane. It's great because at the end of the day, once I'm done, once we're out of this space and we've moved on to whatever it is I end up at, and I just go, do you know what? This is what I did, and it was fun, and I enjoyed it, and it was crazy. That's great. It's not like, it's not bad bearing in mind all I do is run a shop. It's not like, I'm, doing something else. But, if what you do is what you're doing and you're doing it well and you're enjoying it and people appreciate it, then, hey, happy days. It's good. It's worth it then.
2024,
Yes.
I don't know if you would agree with this, but from my perspective, it's going back to the liquid. I feel like in alcohol-free form, it's been the year of lager for me. I think 2024 is when British breweries started releasing lager that was very, very good because we didn't really have any of it. But then this year, or the year just gone, we've started seeing a lot more lagers that you would open and go, this is excellent, but isn't just a Lucky Saint or a Freedom. So I'm seeing a lot more decent lagers come out. I mean, Mashgang did a whole plethora of lagers, and then you've had various other lagers that have made their way to market since. Have you noticed that at all? And what do you think will be the next thing to crack with alcohol-free beers?
I've seen lagers. I don't know if that's the thing that we kind of went as in a lager, we must have it. I think, based on the kind of thing we try and do is we mix it up. But there are way more lagers. But I think the nice thing is that there is a mix. There's lots of different things going on. The lagers have been very good this year. Oh, rather, 2024. I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of pales at the moment. Pales and IPAs. They just seem to be the dominant form.
They've nailed it. That's the thing. The pales, they've had spot on for a fair bit of time now.
I think
it seems to be since liquid hop. Since I've started, or maybe it's just since I've started reading the bloody labels, but since I've seen like hop extracts being used in a lot of these pales, it's like, oh, there we go. Now we're making craft beer.
So,
but I think in 2024, that just the improvement of lagers has been something that I've gone, wow, these have gone from to oh.
I was going to say a lot of that's probably down to confidence because lager is seen as the pinnacle of the brewer's art. There's nowhere to hide with lager, and we are now seeing a number of lager-focused brewers that have done tenure in the German brewing training systems, which are, very, very focused on just perfecting lager. So we're now seeing that bleed through into brewers that are now feeling a bit more confident to do lager and then to adapt that lager as an alcohol-free product. Where do they go from here? I don't know. That's an interesting question. Do we see the development, if we're specifically talking about the use of liquid hops, do we see the development of heavier, more hop-forward products? Where would I like to see it go? I'd like to see a little bit more towards the specialist end of the spectrum. More of a focus on things like red IPAs and black IPAs rather than just straight pales. That to me would be a genuinely interesting space to see low alcohol go. And that's not just my own selfish needs talking, because that's my preferred drinking space if I'm being honest. So see low alcohol follow that would be great.
I think that where we are at the moment, again, staring at the picture that's in front of me, there are so many different spaces that are being explored, not just by, let's say, people having a go at different things, but, spaces that excel at those things that they do well. So, Germany, you're seeing those lagers appear, you're seeing those Weiss beers appear, from the people that's all they do, and they do it well. You're seeing Belgium breweries step up, and they're bringing in, brands like Le Trappe bringing, a Belgian style Zero, or Delirium coming along and having a go. The Schoof brewery, Japanese brewery, Hitachino Nest, doing their ginger ale. You see those guys coming along and putting in their effort, and you're going, well, you're good at what you do, and you're bringing something to the party. So part of that is that whole, well, there's a whole legitimate space here. We don't want to be left out. But also, they're not going to do it unless it's as good as it can be, as good as they believe their effort can be. They're not just cynically throwing something into the ring, although, there is a little bit of cynicism in that. But at the same time, they're not going to attach their name to something if they didn't think it was going to be of quality. Someone who would never do something like the Augustina put an alcohol-free beer last year, started last year. It was insane. I mean, it was
very divisive as well. I read articles about it from German drinkers. It's all. Was it one? The Rainbow Mafia Strikes Again was my favourite one.
How dare you? How dare you put that beer out? You sullied the memory of all the beer drinkers in the beer kellers and things like that. Yeah, absolutely. I think there was a little bit more of a political distribution issue going on, and more from my side. I was just watching the whole thing play out, which is probably why we've not seen any more since It'd be nice for it to come back. I want it to come back, but I don't know if Augustine are actually going to knock another one out. If they do, that'd be great. But if they don't, it's fine. There are other breweries that will play
don't be
along.
sad that it's ended. Be happy it happened.
Be happy for that second it happened. But, I think there are so many places to explore at the moment. You've got the Radler side. You've got the hot water side. Hot water's an interesting one. I love recommending hot waters to people because it's like, here's that other thing that you didn't know existed and also something else. If you don't want a beer, but you want something else, there you go. It's not water. It's not strawberry water. It's not grapefruit water. It's not cucumber water. It's hoppy water.
It's hoppy water. And the good thing about it also is it is genuinely gluten-free. We did have a very we had CDAC come in recently who was asking for, I need something that's gluten-free and I need something that's low alcohol and sugar-free and, very sort of diabetic focused. And we were scratching our heads and the answer was just literally staring us in the face. It was like, that. Because I don't want sparkling water. I don't want still water. I don't want squash. Here's something.
Hot water.
Yeah.
It's
a wonderful thing, isn't it?
I think the hot water thing is also interesting, that if you want to try hops without all that beer getting in the way, if you want to know what hop tastes like, it's a really good way of kind of working out what, Nectaron tastes like, Idaho 7 or whatever.
I did find that very useful, actually, because this was when, last summer, was when I kind of realised that I had to try to understand a little bit more about what this liquid was. It's all well and good. My place in this field is to show people that these beers exist, and nothing more. That's how I always viewed it. Was look at this range, and if you like the sound of it, then there it is. And then as I had more people asking me various questions, it was like, I need to know more about this for me to feel confident in being able to give not recommendations, but just talk about it. And hop water was really interesting for that. So that's a really good point.
It's I think it's an interesting side hustle in this space. I don't think it's still as popular as it should be, but I think it also leads by the fact that is it summer or not.
Yeah.
I think if it's summer, then I think it's definitely something that's much more approachable. But we'll see. It's a space I'm curious enough to be able to go, you know what, I will take a bit of that. So I want it as part of my portfolio. But again, the objective has always been have as many different things going on to keep people interested, give people options on the kind of thing they want, not just that one thing. I don't want just lagers or just pales. It's the same with the rest of the range. I don't want a shop full of hazy pale ales because that would be boring. And also, what about everybody else? So want that diversity. Diversity is important.
What does the optimist and then the pessimist in you say when I ask, where do you think the future of this sector lies as a whole? Do you think it's a fad? Do you think that the industry will move on without it, or do you think it will continue to expand at the rate it's expanding now?
I think it's here to stay. As I said before, I think very early on in this conversation, I think it's as long as people want it. Now, as long as it's sustainable, if breweries feel it's worth their while, they're only going to do it as long as it's worth their while. If it isn't, they're not going to do it. Box is open, the can has been opened. It's very hard for that stuff to go back in. You could look at other markets and go, here's the thing about this, let's say the vegan market, and all these restaurants suddenly just can't operate as vegan restaurants because there aren't enough people to pay the bills. That doesn't mean that thing's going to go away. The people that supported it before it became public thing, everybody wanted a piece of the action. They were there. They're still going to be there afterwards. They're still going to want that thing. Vegetarians aren't going to go away. They're still going to be, you're still going to, people who want to drink will still want to drink. There will still be businesses that will facilitate that. It will be the smaller companies. It will be the niche brands. It's possibly going to be less visible, but it'll be people like me, businesses like me, that will go, actually, I think there's still space for it. I think we've not seen top note of this yet. Yeah, I'm still waiting for, slightly outside of London, temperance bars. I know there's been a couple in London, there's been the temperance off license as well in London, but not as an independent thing. I was thinking it was part of, I can't remember the name of them. People that just advocate alcohol-free drinking. There's a little body, isn't there? I can't remember who they're called. They opened one. But just somebody turn around and go, you know what, I can do this, and why not make it a thing? You could say cynically that's just, showing off, or it's just being, tension grabbing, which, sometimes those things are. I don't think it's going anywhere just yet. I think we're at the early days of that. It will, like everything, peak and fall away. But I think people will always want these things. Maybe in the future, maybe 10 years down the line, 5 years down the line, however long these things last, it's, it may contract, but I don't think we're anywhere near that yet. I think we're going forwards. I think it's just going to get more and more populated with hopefully more interesting things.
See, for me, I think that because it's now gained a mainstream foothold, I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. As Krishan says, maybe a little bit of contraction in people's interest in specifically brewing low and low alcohol style beers, possibly. Because of that mainstream foothold, the Guinnesses, etc., I don't think we're going to see a reduction in that. Maybe it might sort of, from the smaller producers, they might find something a bit more interesting to them at that particular point in time, and maybe put it to bed for a little while, but it will come back. As long as there's a community of people that are committed to mindful drinking and also to sober drinking, then it's not going to go anywhere. It will always be, certainly on our shelves, but I would imagine in the wider retail space, it'll be there as well.
So what you're telling me is basically I'm not going to be out of work for a little while. I certainly hope that you're right. So, Krishan, Tim, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to come and chat to me. I need to pop in tomorrow anyway, because my nan has asked me to get some stouts for my cousin, or there's some weird errand that I've been sent on, so I'll be in tomorrow.
I'll be there. Thank you for asking us onto your podcast. It's appreciated. I think this is the first one we've actually made it into. There's been a few podcasts that kind of go, oh, we'll love you on our podcast, but they've never called back. So, hopefully this will be the prompt. You've got us first, and hopefully, the rest of them will start knocking on our door and go, hey, we heard what you were doing, and it didn't sound that crap.
They'd be fools not to.
Absolutely. But, it's appreciated. Absolutely. Any chance we get to sort of talk about what we do, even, on a bigger basis, is appreciated. It's rare that we get a platform. It's rather than me just ranting to one person about what we do and all the things I hate about it. Mainly that's Tim.
And that one person swearing back at you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Sober Boozers Club podcast. My name is Ben Gibbs. You can find me on all of the social media platforms at Sober Boozers Club. To find Stirchley Wines and Spirits, head on down to Stirchley High Street in sunny old Birmingham. You will not be disappointed with their fantastic selection of alcohol-free beers. For now, thank you for listening. I'll catch you, my friends, very soon.